Good morning. How are you? Thank you very much for joining us. As I said earlier on, this big conversation is revolving around the gender-based violence, because this is us beginning the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. And I think this does touch every single person alive. And some have even lost people and loved ones to this, menace. We call it a menace because it does affect our social lives, our children, our generation, and the next. So allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome my guest. Of course, I'm seeing Orange is taking center stage. So from the far right, Miss Lucy Murumi, who is Commissioner St. John Ambulance.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, nice to have me here.
It's really good to have you. We can't wait to hear your sentiments and your remarks and just talk to us about gender-based violence. And of course, right next to me here is Miss Mugure Kinufia, who is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you for coming. And Kate Kyoko, the counseling psychologist and marriage therapist. Karibu sana.
Thank you, and good morning, viewers. Thank you, Anki.
Good morning. So, Karibu. So a lot of people first are asking themselves, why are we all women on this, sitting? Is gender all about women? So I don't know, you're an advocate. We want to start with that. Probably you want to talk about an aspect of gender.
I would start with the definition of what is gender-based violence.
Yes.
So it's any violence against a person based on their sex or gender. So gender-based violence issues is not only about women, it's about any person, including men and women who go through violence. Mm-hmm. So there are so many forms of gender-based violence. You'll find there's a physical violence mm-hmm. itself, where people are being assaulted. There's emotional violence. People are subjected to emotional violence. Mm-hmm. There's even threats, rape, threats to kill someone. It's mm-hmm. also formed as gender-based violence. Yes. So these are types of violence that yes. happen to people, but it's not only women. It's based on gender and sex. So it happens to men and women. Yes.
Very clear. And we're talking about gender-based violence. You've talked about types of those, types of gender-based violence. I want to also talk to our ambulance personnel. Allow me to say that so the conversation flows. Yes. You have received cases of GBV, yeah. And do they come in these forms?
They come in both male and female. Our response when we get the calls, normally it's of course from distressed people, and when we go in, we always know that we will find maybe somebody who's very injured, and our personnel are always trained to actually understand, come up from a perspective whereby you are actually first of all understanding it's a human being that mm-hmm. you are actually going into an emergency to actually get them out, and it's both male, female, young. The survivors are normally either young ones. Okay. We'll have children. We will have the men. We'll have the women. So from a perspective of emergency, mm-hmm. we treat every patient, every survivor we get as very important to us.
Thank you. You have been, a psychologist, you're a marriage therapist, mm-hmm. and for some reason I'll come back to the law, which has had certain loopholes when it comes to gender-based violence, including the rape definition and all. But I want to hear, are the perpetrators yes. always men? Are the victims always women?
Majority are. Most of the perpetrators are men, and most of the victims are women, most. And very few men will come seeking for help. Okay. And I suppose because of our culture, mm-hmm. where a man is not supposed to express his weakness or something, and we have had most of them personally meeting women as victims and perpetrators being as men. Sorry, yeah. But one incident or two, you can find men, but what they will do, they will call. They will not appear as a person. Mm. Yes.
Thank you for that. Does this then affect how we, approach situations that affect men when it comes to gender-based violence? Because if the reporting, as she's saying, is low, there are, however, victims. How then do we deal with this in law? I mean, how can we then bring them in and support them when it comes to legal assignments?
You find when you're going to the first stage, you want to report a case of assault, and it's a woman who has been assaulted.
Yes.
So going to the OB and then getting the medical report, the P3 form, process and everything. Most of the time you'll find men are afraid of even going to report those cases. Remember there's that senator who tried to go to report that he's been beaten by the wife.
Yes.
And then we created a lot of memes about it instead of actually addressing the gender-based issue. It's the fact that he was assaulted, and you find even when he goes to the police station and he's trying to report, the people you find there will start laughing, saying, are you not man enough to even do this? So you'll find even when I'm dealing with cases, the most cases that come for assault are from women.
Okay.
And even when men are trying to actually say yes, we need to create even safer spaces for men to be able to come and approach and go through the whole legal process, because the violation of your rights under the Constitution, under Chapter 4, you have Bill of Rights and rights not to be violated at any point in time, whether you are a man or a woman. So even our system needs to have safe spaces to understand even men are going through these cases of assault, and the same the law should treat everyone equal. The same measure you use to a woman when you're treating the case is the same measures you're supposed to use, because the penal code is very clear. Any case for assault, section 250 and 251 will attract a penalty for 1 year and even 5 years. So if you're dealing with a case and it's a man or a woman, it should be equal before the law.
I like when you talk about equality of the law, ladies. I will come back to you, but allow me to get more emphasis on the law, because our main question today also was, what does the Kenyan law state about GBV? And as you tell us that there has been challenges when it comes to the law and GBV in matters, I'll give examples for the sake of the Mwananchi, where I have an issue, for example, with my husband, reported to the police GBV desk, and the first thing they say is, we cannot really prove this because you're married. So legally he was allowed to do whatever he did, but really consent. These are one of the loopholes. What exactly then does the state say about GBV?
Let's talk about the fact that if you're talking about marital rape, which happens, and it's there, but proving it, people are saying this is your wife, this is your husband, you consented to marriage, so it seems like you have assumed consent for eternity. But anytime someone says no without consent, that is an offense in itself. You cannot touch me without my consent at any time. So it's very clear, you're not supposed to, but the society is then actually creating that loophole and trying to say, no, you're married, you gave consent from the beginning. So it's like allowing marital rape to continue. But it's an offense. You don't touch me without my consent at any time.
So the victims who are actually abusing their marriages do get justice?
Yes.
All right.
The processing, it's funny because by the time you're reporting at the OB and you're dealing with Kenyan police, they're trying to tell you, no, this case, just go out there and have a small conversation and deal with it. You are supposed to be processed the proper way, according to the law.
All right.
Did I give you consent to touch me? No.
All right.
It's very clear.
And consent can always be changed. From what I know, I can say I want this today, and in the next 5 minutes I'll change. So when you speak of that procedure, I want to come back to you.
Yes.
We have cases reported to you. She's talking about the OB, which sometimes when you get to the law legal state, they say it was tampered with.
Yes.
you know, something happened in the middle, or the evidence was lost. You know, what really does happen in that situation? What should be done, or what isn't being done correctly in a way that does affect our process?
You see, when especially when you know that an offense has occurred, whereby maybe there could be a rape victim, of course, the first thing you need to do is make sure that you don't bathe. And every evidence is actually crucial to your next, to your filing of your case and making sure that your case gets through. So of course, first thing response will be don't tamper with the evidence. Make sure that the evidence applied, whether it is a child, whether it is you, whether it's a man, it's all safely guarded. We will definitely have a PPE bag where we'll put all these, maybe the clothes, if they were stained, we'll put them together so that this will help, especially when it comes to now the OB, making sure that when the P3 form is being filled, any injuries, we make sure that the statements that we get at the scene are actually recorded, and we make sure that this is actually then handed over to the relevant, which is of course the police, and if it needs to go on, then that will go on there. Yes.
Are people sensitized enough?
We try to, as much as we do the awareness, there's always that one person will not be able to know, because you see the perpetrator will always want this evidence to actually not to be there. They will always try to make sure that you intimidate that person, especially to try and make sure that they do not even get the light of day. But if when we talk about sensitization, it is about me and you. How do we do it from the ground level, from the community level? As much as we are there, it starts with you and me. It starts with how we see ourselves on a daily life. So when we start walking our children from a very young age, which is what we do in our ambulance school activities that we do, we show the children how to love one another, how to work with one another. And you see, as you grow up, you understand when it is right and when it is wrong. So in terms of the evidence, we cluster it as sensitive.
Okay.
And we make sure that this is put in to make sure that for your case, it doesn't actually, it doesn't actually is able to be used in evidence for you.
All right.
Yeah.
That's really good to hear, because there have been concerns on that as well. Let me come to the psychological aspects. Having really interacted with victims, someone would want to know, how then would I, because it's not easy to know that I am now hanging out with a perpetrator, or somebody is just about to, pounce on me. Sometimes you just meet people and they're just walking and they're normal human beings. How can I spot a perpetrator?
Most of these perpetrators, it's very hard to identify them, but they are always in your space, okay, and very manipulative. They seem very kind and passionate, but they have a cycle. They have a cycle. So if you are in a relationship with such a person, it's always good to monitor how they behave, different cycles. The first time they will appear very well, they'll give you gifts, they will appear very compassionate and always appreciating, but you realize they don't give you space. They stalk you most of the time. And they go to the other stage, that stage we call it honeymoon. Then there is another stage that we call the tension phase, where now they start becoming moody. They have this what we call silent treatment, and that is when now they start building up. And I'm giving a scenario where it is a couple, even when you're courting. That way you're able to see the red flag. So as you proceed, this person starts slamming doors, and they always, as I said, always in your space, always asking, who are you talking to? And sometimes they isolate you also with the social circle.
Yeah, family,
your friends. They always want you because they want to monitor. So before you know, because it's a cycle and it repeats itself, once they're done, they will become very apologetic the next phase, and you're like, oh, he's changed. So for the victims, without knowing, you realize that maybe it was he was going through this, and you're gonna be okay.
Yes,
so
yes.
it's like this, and this speaks why we maintain most of the. You realize women are in that toxic environment and they cannot walk out because this person one time is good, the second time is moody. You will always say maybe it's because of place of work, and then the third time now he slumps, is in explosive phase. So it is difficult for them to know, who am I with? And this woman start living not their own life, but that person's life.
Is this what we call the traumatic bond? Or is this a different, because there's the aspect of the male paradox,
yes,
and the traumatic bond?
This is not the one, because the traumatic one is after you've been battered and you become helpless. If there are children there, you realize, I have children here. And all of a sudden this person comes again and apologizes. This woman also is a Christian, and he believes that prayers will work, things will change.
Yes.
So he perceives, and most of the friends who are Christians, and it is not good, prayers are good. But if you're not able to monitor this person, you become a victim. And without knowing, you end up like 4 or 5 years in that state without pulling yourself out. And maybe some will share, but you find yourself, you're helpless to come out of that situation.
And you become silent.
You become silent, hoping things will go well, praying that things will go well, and probably sharing with a spiritual leader, and it is okay, we have them. We always anticipate good things. No woman in a normal sense will leave our marriage just because of this. Atakwambia vumilia. Another thing that will contribute for them inside to being in that toxic environment is our culture. I shared with a friend, this is a friend, not even a client, and she was like, our friend was being told, she comes and says, my husband did this and this and that. And then she was like, your dad was like that. Na nilivumilia.
All right.
Vumilia too, that's marriage. So you see culture, religion, and now this guy, very manipulative. All this together, you get confused. And you realize this person was detached itself long time ago. They do not know where they are.
I like when you talk about the contributing factors, and I'm thinking the only thing that might protect us, therefore, is the law.
Yeah.
As much as it's driven from the customary and on religious laws, but there has to be some standard point, because we're seeing female mutilation is cultural. We've seen certain battering statements.
Even wife beating.
Yes,
there are cultures that it's a sign of love.
And
so
even,
it's okay.
And even rape in some countries is actually marked.
Yes.
But what is our country doing about that? How are we protected from this, cultural aspects that are retrogressive? And also, I would also want to know, are there policies that being, or some bills that are coming up in protection?
There are many legal frameworks and policies that are there to try protect every person from any form of violence. We start with the Constitution, start with the fact that we have the Bill of Rights. The whole Chapter 4 talks about that at any time, even the country is supposed to bring what we call gender equality. That's the Constitution. In case you go through issues on rape, we have the Sexual Offences Act on its own, and it clearly outlines what happened, what is an offense, what is a criminal offense, and what's the penalty for it. Some culture on FGM, finally we got the bill in actually the act in 2019, the Anti-FGM Act. Any form of violence against a lady and that mutilation, it's an offense in itself, okay? We have the Penal Code. The Penal Code is trying to actually make sure that in case you go through such forms of violence, you can actually go to court and there's investigation done. Okay? There's a procedure, the proper legal procedure followed, and there's penalties and punishment for such crimes. So even the Children Act, even we find even the children are being vulnerable and are subjected to violence. The the Children Act is trying to make sure anything done is in the best interest of the child.
Yes.
The parental care, the responsibility for the parents to make sure that this child is not subjected to torture or any form of violence. So these policies that are there are trying to make sure that every person, any victim of gender-based violence is protected by the state. And the state needs to make sure that any person in this country is well protected. There is proper legal framework and policies. And then now we have the civil society trying to work together with the government to make sure that there's legal policies that actually help and make sure that there's no, this violence stops or ends, or any person who going through such forms can get out. We also even have the Marriage Act allowing you, in case you're in a marriage and you feel no way, you can go through divorce proceedings. Okay, it's clear. Any form of cruelty, it's a ground for you to ask for divorce. The matrimonial proceedings even telling you don't have to wait for 3 years. We amended that in 2020, saying that you can even apply for a divorce before the end of 3 years.
And we were talking about this, just want the viewer to be with us on the same page. We've mentioned women a lot because data actually shows that women are more victims. Does not mean that if you're a man watching today, this does not touch on you. These laws are for either gender. And if you feel like there's something you want to bring on board to the courts, you will of course give you contact on how to reach Ms. Mugure here as we close. So just keep following and talk to us on our social media platforms. However, there is a question I'm coming to you and the health practitioners. We've seen stories, I will just highlight some, but I know they're in the courts. Sharon Otieno, who was, they say was killed with an unborn child. We've had cases of people killed in bathtubs, and mostly are women or men who are actually framed for certain GBV cases. And somehow, just somehow, these stories are almost never ending, or it's never clear where we got to with this kind of situation. And Kenyans are asking the credibility of the judiciary in handling victims and cases of GBV. You might want to make it clear. Maybe we don't understand how the legal system works.
Trying to make it clear is the fact that she was trying to explain how you need to make sure there is proper evidence, the processing of evidence, so that it doesn't get lost anywhere. In case of rape and anything, you can be able to don't bathe 72 hours report, have a medical report on it. So every time it goes to court and we are able to process the whole case. What you're trying to make sure is that you as a victim, you're brave enough to go through the process, and also we don't lose evidence in between. So legal awareness is there for any person. We need to do more legal awareness for any person who feels they are a victim. You can even get a restraining order if you're living with a person and you feel this is not safe. You just apply under certificate of urgency and you get restraining orders. Okay, so anytime I feel people don't know that there is legal policies and you can be protected from the mess that you have in violence. Okay, if you approach any lawyer or approach any person who can assist you through the whole entire process, and you're able to get your justice for it.
We'll come to if law services are as expensive as you think, or if they're pro bono services. We'll come to that. I want to know about, we've talked about GBV and the types, but I want to hear from you because you handle this first hand. The types of effects, mostly physical effects. We come to the psychological effects with you that you witness on these gender-based violence victims. Children, you could give us in categories: children, girls, boys, even the elderly.
Trauma is very real. When we see this, as we are working with them on the psychosocial support, you see the trauma actually very evident in the way they carry themselves, like let's say later on as they're healing. The immediate effect is they're actually not comprehensive. They're not able to actually even speak on what has happened. This is when we come to the physical side of it. When it comes to the emotional, you'll always find them not wanting to talk. So they will actually either shut down, they will either try to play down whatever it is that has gone on, but most of it is normally shock. Because you see, maybe the person who's doing it, most of the time are people you know, and people who are very close to you.
Trust them.
And you trust them. So that fact that you're looking at it, it could be your uncle, could be, it is your husband, it is your husband, it's your wife who's doing this. But the immediate is normally like, I can't handle this. But long term, you will find them closing in. You'll find she talked about depression.
Yes.
This sinks in, and then the mental health. You will see they'll start deteriorating in the way they socialize, the way they look at life in perspective, and it is actually just letting you. You do not want to actually have. You don't have a sense of why. Why am I even wanting to leave? Suicidal will come in. And the only thing I know is at the end of the day, because like she's saying, the Lord sometimes will not always, you'll not want to speak, and you'll always want to shut and lean back and not want to. Gender-based violence is not just the physical aspect of it. Emotionally, it actually breaks you. It makes you understand why, from our personal point of view,
Yes.
I am a survivor, and I understand what it means not to go to the law and not want people to know. But at the end of it, what matters is emotional balance is what matters at most of the time.
Emotional balance.
Yes.
I'm looking at children who maybe young boys who've been sodomized. When you say don't tamper with the evidence, you know, this is when they say penetration. But this is sodomy of, I would say sodomy, a young boy has been sodomized by, what are the physical, how do we know that this is a boy who has been just abused?
First sign in school, that boy just starts shutting down in school. The boy will not.
You can see these things in school, so teachers should watch out.
The teachers should actually watch out, because you see, the first thing they will do, they will not. If the boy was playful, all of a sudden he doesn't want to go for break to play. He doesn't want to answer the questions. You see, he'll become very reactive. He will actually start even becoming violent in class. Boy who was very talkative just decides no. His schoolwork. When they come home, you'll see the boy doesn't want to, either will be sitting alone, will be trying to make sure that you don't notice. When they go to bed, you see they're also secretive. And also there's a tendency that they would want to practice exactly what has been happening to them. And you will see this tendency of whereby they are trying to maybe play around with the other brother, the other sister,
Yes.
and the silence, the actually sad bit of it is this boy doesn't know what is happening. And most of the time, because the perpetrator threatens the young boy, he will not actually come and speak it out. So what we encourage from a very young age is actually leadership skills, small skills, especially when we do our dolphin. We have young dolphins, very young. We encourage them to speak up. Yeah, in leadership, teach your friends how to actually play safe.
Yeah.
Play safe is making sure that you are actually your brother's keeper.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And when we talk about that, a lot of people would then ask, people have the psychological effects she's mentioning. And for some reason, I'll talk about relationships. You talked about marriages, but we didn't go deep into the psychological effects that make you more silent. There is a threat, yes, but if for some reason, until the homicide happens, we really don't get to hear something that was going on. So what really grounds you there?
What grounds you is a issue of stigma. You wouldn't want to be associated with being abused. You wouldn't want to speak to your friends that have been abused. And as I said, there's a lot of confusion around your mind because you're hoping things will get better. You are very hopeful, but again, you're saying things are not the way they are. And this person makes you hopeless completely. They manipulate you and you're not yourself. So to avoid, and especially if you're in a marriage, just to avoid getting out of your marriage, how would people say? how will I survive without this person, and how will I manage on my own with the children?
Yes.
So it makes you just get there, silence, and probably the person that would have helped you tells you, just be a bit patient, persevere. Things might get up.
You can endure it.
Yes, and the other thing, it could be a childhood experience that you had. Research states that any person who has undergone abuse in their childhood, most likely they become victims in adulthood.
Yes.
What they did, they normalized the situation. In families where there is also violence, to them is okay.
Oh yes.
To them is
There
okay.
is that. Yes.
So for them, I've seen mom being beaten, and so I don't think I don't see any problem being beaten. So they normalize the whole situation, and this COVID-19 things got so intensified. The things were worse. It is because these two people were confined in the same room. You have occupied my space, and most of the time work routine was you're able to suppress your issues and go to work, and you interact with friends and come back, the day is gone. You sleep, you get out of work. Now there is no longer that going to work. You're working from home. This person, you're with them. You're here, and one of them probably they've lost job.
Yes.
And the issues that you had suppressed, they started now building up. You had bottled up. This person didn't manage anger that, or rather you didn't resolve those conflicts. So what happens? Any trigger, it agitates and everything blows up.
This is the explosion you're talking about.
So it is a family setup. It could be workplace. It could be your child experience. There are quite a number of factors that will lead to this GBV. So we cannot say it may be a contributing factor, but victims standing at a risk of it. And alcoholism also, the influence of alcohol.
Yes.
It was more because the male gender, since they don't want to express, I don't want to say they don't, but they try to suppress their emotions. They numb their feelings when they do alcohol. Okay? Most of them drugs, or rather anything else. If you don't drink alcohol, that anger, when you explode, you project that to either to your children or to your wife.
Okay.
Yeah. So there are quite a number of factors that risk such a person, and we don't call them victims now.
We call them
survivors.
Yes.
We call them survivors because it is a story. They've endured, and I'm happy the way they are sensitizing children from a very early stage. That means that child will grow knowing this is how things go. But our culture, until we get rid of that culture, we still have traces that we still transferring to our generation. But sensitizing communities in churches, in every place, like now this platform, we're able to reach. If you educate one, they're able to reach out so many and sensitize. You'll be surprised, the women, they don't know that there is that act. You can get that court, there's restraining order. They don't know until they come, and I appreciate organizations like FIDA, they come and they're able to guide you and empower you. This is it.
Okay.
Illiteracy is another problem.
Yeah.
Poverty.
Yes.
And you stick there because you don't know what to do. So this is a good place, it's a good space where we're encouraging them. I'll go the other side also of the male.
Yes.
Since male, they don't want to be seen as weak, we're gonna create safe spaces. And the digital spaces has worked well.
Okay.
I work with my organization, with my colleagues. We have a digital space for men where they can come and share their emotions, because in a secret, because no one would want to hear being hurt by their wife or rather their children that I'm undergoing depression. where men, and that's why the suicidal incidences are more in men than in women. Women will are able to speak out and talk to a friend. Men ataka ngumu kama
up. Okay. You say kangumu kama mwanaume, especially
and that is our culture. And one thing they need to know, if anyone is hearing me, they are all human.
All right.
They are human. They are vulnerable to any sort of emotional distress.
All right.
But I know, and churches are organizing also for women organization where you come and pour out your distresses and encourage one another. It is very important because we are bringing up kings, and we don't want kings who are not empowered also.
I like when you say about empowerment. I'll come to you about the affirmative action questions and procedures, but you were going to add on something.
Yes, I was going to add on high schools, especially when you talk about sodomy in boys' schools. This is prevalent. When they go in, especially in Form 1, this is a young boy who's coming to school. He doesn't know he's left his family, comes in, finds that maybe this is the culture in the school. So you will find this is prevalent. And when we have, because you see, we move from primary, we also go to high school. As high school, we have a lot of presence, especially where activities are actually carried out. And some of these things are the ones that emerge in when we come to, let's say, those socializing, where you'll find somebody will either come in and tell maybe the patron of the school, this is happening. So this encourage them to speak up. When you know something is happening, speak up. Because you see, when the silence, the perpetrators actually thrive on the silence. So when you teach and empower the young men and the young women from the high school perspective, some of these things you're seeing that is blowing up, the high school, the fires, some of these things you never know what is happening in the dorm, the underlying causes. And she's mentioned about from a family, the family background, there are issues that have happened. So when these young boys do come into school, they're coming in angry, they're coming in wanting to revenge, and the soft spoken maybe boys are the ones that become the first target. And that's where you'll see we go back to the question, how do you know performance again? School performance starts going down.
And I think that's really important because we've been asking ourselves what are the solutions to the arsons that we're seeing in schools across the country. So I think that is something that even the school heads should pick even in this conversation, because 16 days of activism is supposed to give certain solutions and point out certain things. I come back to the legal perspective, and I'm just curious. I really am curious as a citizen, as a mother, as a media personality. It is easy, therefore, to bring evidence that I was physically abused. What happens to me if I was just psychologically abused? Because there's an emotional aspect of violence. How do I get that kind of cover and protection from an abusive partner who's not physically abusing me? Actually, some of them are very silent. There is the emotional abuse that it kicks in as depression later on, but where is our justice system with that kind of violence?
I'll come back again to when you're trying to define what is gender-based violence. It's not only assault and physical violence. You can also report emotional violence, which forms part of gender-based violence. So if people are aware that the fact that it's not only that the fact that you have a big mark or you're going with a red eye or a black eye, that's the only time you're able to report. Report even emotional violence, which you are able to, actually you see that the people who are subjecting, who are the perpetrators of this violence, it's any person who is on a higher position than you, and they're trying to control you so many times. But understand that even physical and emotional violence forms part of violence. So be able to report that. Before you get now to the messy part of depression and then suicidal.
The explosion.
The explosion now comes in. Now the cases is someone just killed themselves because they could not express themselves, or they didn't know that emotional violence is also gender-based violence.
It can be acquitted and vindicated. On that, I know you're watching back at home. I want to read your feedback real quick, but before that, just like the common Mwananchi, the thing, well, I'm in my house watching breakfast today, I'm watching the morning drift, I'm inspired, I see there's an advocate, but I just can't I just can't pay the fees. You know, do they have to, the survivor, do they have to pay for the fees, for the consultation? How do they figure out it? Because someone's probably trying to figure out that right now.
We do take, even as an advocate, we also do take pro bono cases. You're allowed to take pro bono cases. There's also institutions that actually do process those pro bono cases. Kituo cha Sheria, we have FIDA also does pro bono cases. So don't feel that you cannot afford an advocate and you're afraid to actually do it. Just come, say this is happening. I'm allowed by law to actually take some pro bono cases, and if not that, I can refer you to institution in this country which is working together with the government to try to provide these services. Kituo cha Sheria is there, FIDA is there. You will get your justice.
All right, so just keep going, search, walk around, find, you always find help somewhere.
Yes.
And even in the grassroots?
Yes.
One more thing. I would like to help the perpetrator.
All right, please.
In a family, let me say a couple family. I am specializing in marriage and family. If you meet this couple and they experience this emotional, what we cannot allow really is when your life is in danger. So you want to explore and understand this person, because what this person is doing, as she says, he wants to take control. He's fulfilling his desire for power. Okay. And he could be doing this because of his past experiences. And when we bring them to therapy, you are able to explore and let him be aware his behaviors could be embedded because of a past experience, and you help them understand that and how it is harmful to his couple. And so if they mean well for this marriage to work, then you're going to work on their experience and work on what they have had in the past, because what he's doing is just want to take power and control over the situation.
A lot of therapy and counseling
yes. And
Maki,
it's not only emotional, we also have verbal, name calling, we also have intellectual, where they try to rate your intellectual ability. We have financial abuse, where you have to account for any money that you have used. So it's a lot that abuse at people, and they may not be aware. And these are things that are handled when you are handling either premarital counseling or couple counseling.
You know, I like when you talk about financial, because there's this man in the house who says, niliacha 20 bob hapa.
Yes.
And you feel like my husband is just trying to be the man of the house.
That's an abuse.
My goodness, it is an abuse.
Yes.
And let me just read a bit of your feedback here. Wycliffe in the Muli says, good job, Anki and the team for the morning drift with visitors. Gender-based violence is appreciating the panel. Thank you. And that is Wycliffe. He's a man, so I'm glad that he's part of the conversation.
Thank you.
Agustin Omondi says, good job, big team. Well, here is my team. Thank you very much. Labi Laban, good morning. Where are you watching us from? Magdalene Mumbi Msioka says, this is lovely. Manu Kambu and Koni Mwangi are so very proud of you. Are these names familiar to either of our panelists?
No. And it's a good support system. Because I'm looking at what we also fail to do is to have a good support system. Support system starts from your friends. How do you relate to your friends, and how can your friends know you have a problem? First of all, your high school friends will notice you don't go to socialize. Either male, female, you don't do. Your women friends will notice you're not in the chamas. The men friends, you will notice you're not in the social clubs. So once that support system, because you see the perpetrator will always try and cut it off. Will always try and make sure that you're not actually socially active. Very true. It will even come with your gadgets, your phone. They track you, or they will control how you use your phone in the house. So where you'll be constantly hiding, like let's say like now, maybe right now there could be somebody who is watching. This is actually resonating to them. The first thing they will do, cut off financials, Make sure that you're socially not active on Facebook, on Twitter and everything else. But you'll always remember, if you have that one close friend, that one close friend who knows you, they will always speak it. They will always speak it.
I like that we're gauging the conversation. If someone is able to pick, this is it, there's it. Now I want to come back to you, and we just want to look once again at the steps and levels. Now step by step. This probably somebody can say, I'm at stage 1, I'm at stage 2, or maybe this is just about to explode. Which are the levels of abuse? When does it start mild? I know you told us this earlier, but in a more detailed, someone can pick where they are at in stages of abuse.
It doesn't just come physical immediately, but it will come with emotional.
Okay.
And some of the factors is what she's mentioned. Monitoring and always on your space. They don't always
like you said,
even as much as we are a couple, we need also to have our own time. Me time, yeah. But it always, where were you? What were you doing? Who are you with? And every function you would want to be there with you. But also the way you would talk, and sometimes you will comment such threats, and then it will be like, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. If you leave me, I will.
Yes.
I will kill you.
Yes, those are threats. Those are threats that people need, and we take them for granted, but they are some of the contributing factors. Now, this person is in that, he is playing it very cool. He's playing very smart. He wouldn't want to know, he wouldn't want you to know the kind of a person he is. So it graduates like that, then he becomes moody all of a sudden.
So now there
is a silent treatment that you just become agitated, and you wonder why. What did I do wrong? Is it place of work? And in your mind, you're like, things are going to be okay. The next time is breaking things, is shouting, and you're like, why? And one thing I need to tell those who may be going through this, you do not deserve such treatment. You don't deserve it. You deserve to be happy. You don't deserve to be humiliated. You don't deserve to be, isolated from your friends. You also need to be you. Because most of those victims, they are not living their life anymore. They are living other people's life. You need to find yourself and bring yourself and do what we call self-love. And no one should question. You need to have a consent, and then a mutual agreement. That freedom, you need to have that freedom. So anyone who threatens your freedom, then you start questioning. Okay. And it could be a personality, and that's why I was saying sometimes it could be someone's personality that they've picked from somewhere. Others, it could be a transition, from, we call them multi-transmission process, from generation to generation. You've seen it, you have adapted it, and you're using it in your family. So why marriage and family? That's why we come and confront such issues and address them.
When you mentioned that there's counseling, there's therapy, and there's mediation.
Yes, there's mediation.
Yeah, she's a mediator, and I'd really love to understand how it works with the court. This is family, for example, let alone relationships. Or it's not really in family, but there's a child involved. So how does mediation come in? Let alone arbitration.
Once there's a case in court, we have what we call court-annexed mediation, where the Constitution allows under Article 159 that if you feel you need to access justice, we can use other forms which include traditional dispute resolution, we can use mediation and arbitration. So you can go through a case and you feel, since the court is an open place, and you don't want to get everyone to know that you're in court and it's messy and people just come in court and they find you having cases, you can request the court that we would like to settle this out of court. And when you're doing mediation out of court, is the fact that I, as a mediator, will come in as a third party, and whatever we discuss within with that case and the dispute itself, I'm not supposed to discuss it outside. So there is confidentiality when you're doing mediation. You find the cases of maybe family. There's so many nitty-gritty issues that you're not able to express them when you're in open court.
And emotional.
And then maybe for the case, there's no court date. There's so many cases in court. So before you get your hearing date, it takes like maybe 2022 is when you get a hearing date. But if you request for out-of-court settlement, which is mediation, and you get a mediator to facilitate, you can resolve that dispute within 2 days or even a month. Okay? And with the mediation is that these parties who are in conflict are able to come up with solutions that will work for their family. So if there's this case of let's say assault, and it's not it's just common assault, which attracts maybe a year, and you're asking, this person is repentant and they want to settle it out of court, maybe go for counseling when you're doing mediation, and they request, yes, we will settle this, I'll go for counseling, and you can be able to work on it. You even write a settlement agreement after mediation, and that settlement agreement, that's binding, because the settlement agreement will be taken to court and it become a ruling or a judgment. So what you have agreed as parties, and you had issues, you get a settlement agreement, you take it to court, it's adopted and becomes out as a court order.
So there's so many ways to kill a, how do you say that?
To kill a rat.
To kill a rat.
Something.
And then I would like to say
mediation is a 50-50 win. It's shorter compared to the court. And then the two parties, they're at peace with each other. The emotions are controlled. The mediators are trained well in that they can be able to control the emotions. So there is no that ugly scenario like in courts. So it's a bit gentle. So
it's not like
of mediation.
It's not like when the government says we do not negotiate with terrorists. Here, if you're repentive, if you're a narcissist,
the chances of recurrence are always there, because you see they derive their strength from how they actually treat their the survivors. And when it comes to mediation, she talks about from the law perspective, but there's also the church. There's also the community level. There's also your mediation whereby we try and solve this before it actually gets to court. Because you see, when that system now goes to that place, sometimes you do not, you can't turn back. And you see, because this sometimes there's children involved, sometimes there's friendship involved, whatever it is, and work also related. So most of the time, before you get to that court process, seek out other avenues, and if it is like she said, walk out, if it is a physical aspect out of it. But I'm speaking to that lady who's maybe in that home, maybe in the slums, and you don't have a way out. There's that neighbor who you go to, especially every time this happens, there's that one friend you go to. That is where you start off from first. From there, come to now maybe the upper class. There's that group that you normally mediate from that point. If the all ends and all means there's nothing else, now then that is when you know this is a point of no return. That physical, like she's saying, abuse, if it is on that level, I think how you value yourself as a human being. If you don't value yourself, then the bashing continues. But if you do that, I believe, knowing that we do have a way. Sometimes I know she talked about God and prayer. Sometimes it is actually the solid ground that we stand on. It becomes that place whereby you need to actually even have that relationship with your maker first, for you to be able now to even have the balance or even having a relationship.
I like that this conversation has really flown, and we have touched on the legal perspective, psychological perspective, and the health perspective. And I want to close, but I want to, of course, challenge you. As we close, when I come to all of us, it will be just your final remarks on how to, like you say, value yourself and not put yourself in a certain situation that might prompt this GBV against you. I'll give you an incident of a couple that was killed in a house, or couples that have killed their partners in a house, but the neighbors would hear the noise and just assume it's one of those normal fights, and to wake up in the morning is either tulimpata kwa nyumba kama tulisikia harufu, you know, and that usually gets me thinking, are people now afraid of getting involved, you know, in houses where they sense or feel there's violence, you know? So we might have that at the back of our mind when we speak to the viewer in your last remarks, because this is 16 days of activism. We want everyone involved. There's been an aspect of, that'd be fine. So you want to talk to them about that. So on the medical aspect, just very briefly, there is a concern of, you know, sometimes we've had doctors rape patients.
Yes.
I mean, I've come to you, my family has trusted me with you, but I am abused in the health facility. Are these cases that are real? What have you done about it? Or what do we expect, you know, moving forward? Because now you're on the spot.
From an emergency perspective, of course, that doesn't go well. Because you see, when they are coming to us, they're coming to us for help. So when we become the perpetrators, it means that then, same thing.
Lose trust.
Yeah, we lose the people's trust. So as much as we can say that we are treating, there's always going to be a bad element, one bad egg. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't actually go out and actually look for this help. Because the idea is, what is the post of the GBV? You want to get better. And it's just unfortunate that we have doctors who actually now are using this platform to make sure that they are actually driving their own agenda. From the health perspective, this is wrong. And that, I believe, if you do know, because everybody who does this, there's always somebody who does know what is going on. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I will give each of us a minute this week just to first call out for people to join the 16 days of activism. Remember, this is for all gender. If you're watching, I've seen men following. This is for all gender. And I'll start with you, Ms. Muguru. Just 1 minute. I think this should be, my camera crew should help me know which camera you can use. And 1 minute each for the remarks as we close the session. Karibu, we'll start with you.
I know we're doing 16 days of activism, legal awareness, and all these issues. I would say for any person who is a victim, kindly note that the law is there to protect you. There are so many ways that you can get out and you can be helped, and there's legal proceedings and procedure that will assist you. I would say that in case you're in a relationship, and in Kiswahili they say mapenzi ni safari. If your journey it has so much struggles, kindly get out, live. We need you alive. We need you safe, and the law is there to protect you.
All right, like you had that, we need you alive, we need you safe, and the law, she assures you, is here to protect you. We'll go to you, ma'am.
Okay, it's saddening the way we have lost quite a number of innocent lives through GBV, and what we can encourage is for the survivors, healing is a process. We also have to support them, and because there is a lot of bitterness, and those wounds, actually the emotional wounds are more painful. So let us support them as they heal towards that. And Canadian women, I think it's a Canadian women fund that I think they've invented the signal of when they're in danger.
All right.
Okay.
I think I've seen it. Yes. Yes.
So I hope we embrace the same. But we are growing as a community. But let us support one another and be that voice. The 16 days that we are having, let our voice be louder. And I appreciate every viewer.
And I think what I picked from you is let our voices be louder.
Louder, yes.
Let's end the silence, and through these 16 days, let your voice be louder. I'll end with you.
Okay. What I can say is that at the end of all this, your health is very important. Mental health, physical health is very important. And what I can say post-GBV, as actually a survivor, I understand. The best thing is GBV doesn't have a face. It is anyone, could be any man, female, it does not have. But the voice that you have is change can be there by speaking out. And most of all, we start from a very early age, teach our children, show them how to love one another, depend on one another, and most of all, have a strong anchor. Strong anchor. My anchor has been God.
Beautiful sentiments. Thank you so much, ladies. And just to tell you, viewer, the women you see here, I think half of, if not all of us, are raising kings.
Yes.
So we do know how we want to raise men who are not perpetrators, and we want to raise men who can speak up if the perpetrators are against. So thank you very much for being part of the conversation. And I remember meeting one of the survivors in a matatu. I think 2 days or 3 days ago. Allow me to say this on a light note as I close. And she was speaking right behind me, and she was talking about her story. And what she said very loudly, I think everyone in there heard, she said, "We don't care about this anymore. I wear my scars with pride."
Yes.
So if you're a survivor watching this morning from the media fraternity, it's just to say, this is the time to wear your scars with pride.
It signifies strength and triumph.
Yes, and like you said, raise your voice, let it be louder. Your health is important. You're protected by the health fraternity. And the lawyer is here, the advocate is here to say you are protected by the legal stretcher. So open up, talk to us at Look Up TV. Our WhatsApp number is on. I'll give you feedback in a bit. But allow me to take a short breather and also catch up with my guests. But up next is your Aspirant Forum, and also we have a beautiful segment of Fabulously Healthy that you don't want to miss. Remember, it could be serious issues, but to make you a more fantastic person. My name is Anki. We'll be right back with more on The Morning Drift.
Thank you.